Welcome back to the Shop Mini RC, everybody. I'm Ken, and today we got a new one of these. Yep, that's a TRX4M Bronco. It's the first Bronco we've gotten, but it doesn't really matter because this Bronco is turning into a Bettle. This is the Furitek Bettle chassis. So we're going to build this guy up. We've also got some of this and some more Furitek, one of these guys. So this will be the first time using this. And first time putting a brushless in a TRX4M, and it'll be going in a new chassis. So we're also going to send this guy over to 3Flow9 RC, and he's going to anodize it for us. We're going to no longer do the rainbow. We're going to just get it kind of a greenish, bluish color, whatever he can get for us. So we'll see how that comes out. Alrighty, this guy's brand new. We ran it for like maybe 5 minutes. My son wanted to run it around, so he ran it around for just a few minutes. But yeah, we'll go ahead and pull this guy all apart, and we'll get going on this chassis. Let's see what we got in the chassis here, though. So this is the titanium version. This is what she looks like. Comes with our roof, our hardware, battery strap. What else we got here? Tray, all that goodness. And yeah, I think we need to get this over to 3Flow9 so we can get it anodized for us. Bam! Look at that. So no longer rainbow effect. Now it's just more of a solid color, which we're digging. It's also still got the purples and the greens and the yellow, but overall it's a solid color, which I really like that. I like the solid. Not that the rainbow effect isn't cool looking, because it is, and it was super dark. Like the colors were very vibrant and dark. These are a little bit more flat, a little more dull, I guess. But I kind of like that, honestly. We'll see how it pops once it's all together. Pretty excited. So this should be a very simple swap over. We're literally just going to pull our shocks off. Our 4 screws here for our shocks. And then we're going to pull out the belly plate here, the skid plate, which is these 6 screws. And we should be able to drop everything right out. We'll have to pull off the ESC. Actually, we'll leave the ESC because we're not going to use that. So we'll just leave that in the chassis. And yeah, should be pretty simple. We don't have to undo the links or any of that kind of stuff. Just the shocks and the skid plate. And we should be good. The chassis comes with our 2 chassis rails, our main electronics and tray. We're going to use a stock battery tray, I believe. Our roof, our 2 braces. These are the brace screws. These are the roof screws. These little guys are Phillips heads. And then the 4 longer screws with nuts are for your shocks, because you have to put nuts on the backside since you're not going into plastic. We've got our brushless system set up here. This is the Micro Komodo. It's a 3450 kV. It's on a Lizard Pro. The Lizard Pro, when you buy this set for the TRX4M, it comes with the correct battery plug. And then we've got our Avatar receiver. And this is actually a Bluetooth. This is for the Bluetooth. You plug in your little Bluetooth module to this. If you don't have a Bluetooth module, you can actually there's a jumper that is not a splitter like this, and it'll just go from your ESC to your receiver, and then you get a lot of that data and functionality that the Bluetooth would give through the app, but directly on the transmitter, the Avatar transmitter. We're not going to go too into depth now. Eventually we'll do a video on the Furitek Avatar transmitter and all of the settings on that, but for now we're not going to show that, but we'll get it set up and we'll show you the basics. All right, let's go ahead and get this guy out of this stock chassis and into this guy. Something interesting that I've noticed already is that the stock Traxxas shock bolts are M2.5s. Okay, and it looks like the Furitek shock bolts, yeah, they're M2s. So this is basically the same hardware that like an FCX would run. So that's interesting. I wonder why they chose to go with M2 versus M2.5. Could have just used the stock bolts and added some nuts in, I guess. I don't know. Although I guess if you were building it from the ground up, you would need the bolts for the shocks anyway, so it's nice they include that. Definitely not complaining about including that. And it's especially interesting since you're still going to use the M2.5s down here. So I find that interesting for sure. All right, can I just pull this out? Probably not. We probably need to take the bumpers off, or at least one side, right? So we'll go ahead and pull off one side rail all the way. So that includes the front bumper, shock tower, the rear shock tower, and the rear bumper. Then this whole thing will just come right off. Bam. Set that aside, and then we should be able to pull this whole side off. Ta-da. Now, we're going to have to cut some zip ties, I guess. All right. So there's our stock chassis. We'll go ahead and throw our screws back in because we like to make sure we save stuff. All right, we'll go ahead and throw this guy back in the parts bin. Maybe someday it'll turn back into a Bronco as we upgrade stuff and have extra parts. I'm sure it'll get there. And now we've got this. So I almost want to just go ahead and put the new motor in right now. It'll just make it easier. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We'll pop this transmission out. Should be just these 4 screws. We'll throw the new motor in. Oh, you'd have to pull the battery tray out. Wah, wah, wah. Ta-da! Alrighty, let's go ahead and set this guy aside. Alright, so now we just pull off this. Oh, we have to pull a drive shaft off too? Man, okay. And then we can pull the front of the transmission housing off, which is just another 4 screws. And actually, this would be a good time to change over to bearings. So we'll go ahead and do that. And there you go. There's all your bushings. There's going to be bushings on the other side as well. So we're going to be taking this guy quite apart. You got to pull the other drive shaft off. I believe the drive shafts are the exact same length, so you don't have to worry about them getting mixed up on front and rear. Not a big deal there. And now you can pull all the gears out. While you're taking the gears out, do them in an order that you can remember, or you can try to reference this video. And then the motor. Ta-da! All right, let's get our bearings. And heck, while we're in here, we'll go ahead and put our crawler gears in, the low-range crawler gears. We're going to be using fast eddy bearings. And again, in this one, we're just showing the... oh, I didn't even need to do that. It just actually opened. I don't know why I tore at it. We're just going to be doing the transmission bearings in this video. One tip I like to give is when you're trying to pull out bearings or bushings, use one of the pieces that goes into those bearings or bushings because it fits just right, and then you can work it out. Right, so you can just kind of work that bushing out of there. Right? If you try to use like a screwdriver or flathead, stuff like that, you might just end up having a hell of a time. Now sometimes when they're exposed like this on the back, you can just push it out. There's no issue. Oh, But if it's hard to get in and out, then definitely try just kind of wiggling it. Okay. These are going to be these smallest ones here with the black, their shields, the black shields. Not this guy. Just like so. Okay, and we'll do this side. Bam, done. Go ahead and do our slow crawls now. So because we're going to be using the Furitek brushless, they do recommend the slow crawl gears just to help with cogging, but there should still be plenty of wheel speed, so that's why we opted for the slow crawl. We'll see. We'll probably do another installation without the slow crawl just to kind of see the difference. But in this one, we'll start with what they recommend. This should just be as simple as popping out your rods and putting the new gears on them. Alrighty. So let's go ahead and get our motor on here. Alright, so that's a super simple installation there. So again, this guy goes in like so. This guy goes here, small gear up, and then like so. Okay. Pretty straightforward. Make sure everything feels nice and smooth, and then start putting your transmission housing screws back in. Remember, don't over tighten. Over tightening in plastic means you'll strip very easily. Also, what am I doing? Don't try to use any kind of Loctite unless it's plastic Loctite, unless of course you have a aluminum or metal transmission housing. Then I would highly recommend Loctiting. Whenever you go metal into metal, you really want to Loctite that. Simple as that. And we get our transmission back into our chassis here. Now, one thing that you didn't see us do was lube up the transmission gears. And we decided against that because the stock gears were not lubed up. And my guess is that if Traxxas thought there was going to be a wear issue, they would have lubed them up, right? Because they don't want the customer service issues. So that's a pretty easy thing for them to do from a manufacturing standpoint. So they probably felt like it wasn't really necessary at all. And that's because they're plastic gears. Now, if they were metal and you were doing all metal gears, I would recommend oiling or lubing them up a little bit. But one thing you got to remember is when you add lube and oil, it attracts dirt, right? And when you start to attract dirt, then you've got maintenance and you have to take this thing apart, clean it up, stuff like that. So sometimes it's just better to run things dry. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to run it dry. If they happen to wear quickly, gear sets are $5, and maybe at that point we'll just upgrade to a metal gear set. All right, new transmission with bearings and our brushless motor all installed. We're ready to go. We're going to throw it into our new chassis here. Oh, got our battery tray. Got to throw our battery tray back on. And then we'll throw it into our new chassis. All right, pretty simple. We got the one side of the chassis in, our 3 bolts there. That includes our upper links, so make sure you get your drive shafts in when you're doing that. And then we're going to go ahead and throw the other side on, and this center tray. Center tray should go something like so. And like so. We'll get our little starter screw here in. That'll help hold the chassis. And get our links in again. All right, both sides are done on the chassis and the skid plate, and now we'll just do our brace. We're going to do the brace on the back. Not sure where we'll do the brace on the front yet because it's going to depend on where we put our shocks, but I definitely want a brace all the way at the back here. So we'll go ahead and do that. And because we're going metal into metal, right, we're going to use a little bit of Loctite here. much, but it is what it is. Alrighty. Nice and snug there. So I'm just looking at the shock locations here, and one thing I wish they would have done is included spacers, because the way the kit comes, you cannot use the upper holes, right? All of these upper holes, you will just bind on if you try to use them. So you have to use all lower holes unless you have a spacer. So it would have been nice if the kit came with 4 spacers that were, 2mm, maybe even more, I'm not sure, spacers. And then if you needed appropriate screws for that, they should have included those as well. That's the only complaint I have so far. Everything else seems to be going together very well. And yeah, I'm happy with it. Let's just get these shocks. Let's get them in quite a bit here. We'll do the backs and then we'll get on the fronts. And again, because you're going into a nut here, you definitely want to run some Loctite through it. Just a little bit. Make sure you got some Loctite in there. Should be good. Throw it through your shock. Throw it into your mounting hole, and you should be golden. Just want to make sure we're not really hitting anywhere. The shock on the chassis, that's what I'm looking at. And I think for the most part we're good. Yeah, we're bottoming out before it actually hits, so that's good. All right, let's get the side on. We've got our fronts on, we got our rears on. I do kind of wish there was just 1 or 2 more mounting positions, especially if you're going to do it at the top. You could have put a mounting position all the way down to here because you're going to need spacers anyway. But I wish they would have moved just a little bit further, a little more down here. They could have given us just a couple more holes. Not a big deal though. I just like to get stuff real low. We may have to do something with the springs here and just kind of run it in a droop setup, a forced droop. I don't know. We'll just do it stock for now, but over time we'll adjust it. I like to show things the way that the manufacturer kind of wanted it laid out. So that's what we're doing here. I'm going to go ahead and put this second brace in and the roof now. The second brace, I think we're going to put as close to the servo as possible, so as far out towards the front as we can. So let's see here. Run it across the top. I think we can go right here. I wonder if that'll work. Let's see. Where's it going to hit? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're in the 5th hole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that'd be there. Are we hitting? Yeah, let's go back 1 hole. So we'll put it in the 6th. And we should have plenty of clearance now for the servo. I really am not a big fan of these stand-up servos. We'll probably switch this to a lay-down at some point. Just because if you wanted to put a body on, you can't. You can put it real low. It's got to be pretty high up. And if you have a heavier servo or a longer servo, it makes it even worse, and your center of gravity is not so hot. So, I don't know. I'm just kind of not the biggest fan. I also think they look really ugly. So I don't like the way they look at all. All right, let's get our roof on. We're just going to do 2 screws on the roof for now, because we want to be able to open it up. Again, these are Phillips. Something really cool that I've seen before is this style of roof where you've got bars, just like these braces that go across, and that's what the roof is hooked to, and the roof actually will just snap onto the bars. That way, when you need to get in here to access stuff, you don't have to pull screws out. You can literally just pop it off. So that'd be a good design for the future if they decided to do a redesign, or just future chassis in general. Make it so that these roofs can just flip up. You could have it permanently screwed in the back if you wanted, or wherever it makes most sense, depending on where electronics would be, but then it just clips over a brace bar. That would be good. Alrighty. So we need to get our electronics in there now, and then we are good to go. All right, so before we install all of our electronics, I just want to get it set up on the app, make sure everything's working properly. So we've got our motor hooked up, our servo hooked up. Let's go ahead and plug it in. Should be good there. Right, we got servo. And maybe we've got throttle. Let's go ahead and calibrate. Remember, well, the first thing you should always do is update your firmware. Check for the newest firmware. Make sure you update it. Looks like we're on the newest firmware. I also have a video going through all the settings. I'll put it right over here. It goes through all of the crawler settings in the Furitek app. So I'm not going to make you watch this. You can go watch that video. All right. So we used our double-sided 3M tape, servo tape, to tape down the ESC, the receiver, as well as the battery plug. And then basically when we pull the battery in and out, we'll just tuck the battery wire through the back. So as simple as this. Throw this guy back through here. Put our battery in. Now we can tuck it down. Oops. That'll be screwed on, obviously. Tuck it down, and then you can take your battery cable and just flip it around and plug it in. Pretty simple. I think it's pretty clean. Okay. Yeah. That's about as clean as you're going to get it. I thought about trying to mount stuff underneath or in here, down in there, and you probably could if you like. You'd have to really work it. You have to move my shock bolt was also kind of in the way. If the chassis was just a tad wider, or like just a slightly different design, you definitely could do that, but that's not what this is. So you got to put them up in here, which isn't horrible. You should try to get forward weight bias as well. So ideally we probably should have mounted them forward, but I don't like the way that looks. I want the front cab area looking like a cab. If you really want to try to get scale with it, which you wouldn't really do here, but you could build like something to block this off so you don't see it, right? And then you just have your front. This is kind of blocked off with something. You know, something like that. Block it off so you don't really see it. Build like a window or something. Put netting there. I don't know. But then you still have this open front window, which is better, in my opinion. Just looks better. But again, if you really want the forward weight bias, you can try to mount everything forward. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and wrap up our servo. You can see we've wrapped up our cables here. We basically just take a long screwdriver or a long Allen wrench and essentially wrap it around. You can heat it up. Just a little bit of heating will help make it stay. You usually don't have to though. We didn't. Let's get this guy started here. All right. Boom. And twist it on. Just make sure you don't pull too hard on the plug end. When you're making it tight, you want to make it tight to kind of get that shape, but you don't want it to be pulling on this. So we twist it from here, essentially. Maybe we'll run it underneath. I don't know. I just don't want to hit in the motor. You can put it through here. Tuck it up under, like so. Maybe. All right. So we fed our servo wire underneath, tucked it up in, and I think it looks pretty clean, right? And then we can just plug it in and unplug it from the back here. Pretty easy. I'm digging it. Let's go ahead and screw our roof on, and then I guess we take it for a drive. That's probably a good idea. We were going to be done, but before we run it, we're going to go throw this stuff on there. This is the 3Flow9 flow skid for the front and the rear link riser for the back. So we're going to throw those on here. We're going to check it out while we run this guy. No reason not to. We have them. Let's do it. So we're going to do the flow skid first. It mentions on the back to use the M1.4s that it provides versus the stock screws. That way you don't break the studs on the back of this guy. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Pull this guy off here. Go ahead and open this guy up. There's that flow skid. Look at that. So it's, I believe it's a 3D printed cover, but then we have the Delrin skid and then this slick like Delrin tape or some sort of tape material. Super quality though. Looks really good. And it's slick. So let's go ahead and get that on here. So one of the easiest ways to do this is just to pop your lower links off, and then it gives you enough of an angle here to where you can reach your bolts and pull that diff cover off. These are the screws, the stock screws. They're plastic screws, so that's why you don't want to use them. You want to make sure you use the stocks or the screws they provide, because the plastic screws will split or break, potentially break these things. So let's go ahead and throw this guy on here. Bam. Nice. Alrighty. And then the washers are for the back here. So let's make sure you throw a washer on. And you definitely don't want to over tighten these, just enough so it's snug. There's no reason to have them super tight. Again, you really don't want to over tighten at all. These don't need, basically you want to go until you feel resistance on these. If you try to go too tight, you're definitely going to strip it out. So just be aware. And there we have it. Again, it does add just a little bit to your approach angle, but I think it's a healthy addition because it's going to prevent things from snagging on your steering link. The Traxxas steering link sticks really far forward. That's part of why it gets such good steering, but man, it sticks far out. And so I would rather add a couple millimeters of approach angle, just that little bit right there, and make sure that we are going to be able to clear it and use this skid to our advantage, right? Like we're going to be able to hit rocks on purpose on the skid specifically so that we don't hit, you know, our steering knuckles here or part of our links, or however we need to approach it, we can now approach it and have a good spot to hit. It's the same height as the normal diff cover, right? Or same height, I guess. So you're not dropping any lower, which is good. You just do increase a little bit of the front approach angle here. But again, I think it's a healthy addition. I don't think it's a negative at all. So I am definitely digging that. All right. We got a 3Flow9 sticker on here as well. And we're going to go ahead and do the rear. Something else I want to point out, we popped our rear spring perches off so that we could drop a little lower and have a little bit of droop. We could also change out the springs, but we don't have any different springs for these shocks. So we just popped our perches out, and it allows it to sit a little lower. And it actually gives us more articulation as well, because the shock housing is not bottoming out on the perch. They used to stop about here because they'd be hitting the perch. Now we have that little bit extra. So it gives us a little bit extra articulation. And again, you're kind of sitting at droop, right? And droop is the amount of travel you have when you're sitting at rest. Your truck's sitting at rest and you lift up on it and the wheels stay down. That's the amount of travel you have, droop travel you have. So if you're full droop, basically you're all the way down at natural rest. So that means that your axles will droop as you lift it up, right? If you have no droop, like our front has no droop, basically when you pick it up, the axles come off the ground immediately, right? Whereas on the back, because we took those perches out, we have a little bit of droop, right? Kind of get it to sit where it would naturally sit, and then lift, and you can see that's droop. Okay, the front has a little bit, I guess, if you were to push down, you get a little bit of droop, but not nearly as much as the back does now. Okay, and you can adjust that with spring rate. You can adjust it with how long the shock shaft is. People pull the springs out. Some people do forced droop, which basically they're putting bands around and they're completely compressing it all the way. Yeah, it's just a matter of how you want to run your rig. All right, we're going to go ahead and throw this rear link riser on now. This guy here. Yeah, we'll talk about it as we install it. So this guy comes with 2 screws, and we're going to use those to mount it to the axle. Actually, I take that back. We're going to use the stock screw to mount it to the axle, and then we'll use the 2 screws to mount our upper links into the positions. Now, to explain how this works, the point of raising your rear links and separating them out a little further, if you notice here, they'll be a little further separated. The raising of the links gives you anti-squat. So that means as you're going up a hill, it will keep your chassis up, okay, which helps prevent unload in the front, right? So as you're going up, those higher links will give you better geometry to hold your chassis stable, and that'll basically keep your front pushing downward, right? Think about higher links will push more this way, right? Which will keep your front down as you're going up. It'll prevent the front from unloading more. So that's what anti-squat is. And then the width helps with your side hilling. It helps give more stability on your side to side. The more you have a single pivot point, the closer they are to the center here, the more you're going to have, the less resistance you're going to have on your side to side here and your side hilling of your chassis, right? So if you're on a hill, your chassis will want to drop. But if you increase the width of the links in the rear on the upper, it will help hold your chassis or body, and it won't just flop to the side and unload sideways. Okay, so that's the 2 benefits you get by running a link riser. All right, so we're going to go ahead and just pull one of our wheels and tires off so that we can access this guy here. We can unscrew our links. We can pull our links out. And then we can take this guy and just drop it right in there. Okay, put our stock screw back in. Bam. And now we can throw our links on. Now we have to decide where we want these to be sitting. I feel like we're just going to do the center. Do we want to clock it backwards? No, we just want to do right here. We're going to do the center upper. Actually, will that cause us to hit? No, we should have plenty of clearance there. No, we're going to do the bottom. We're going to do the bottom one. We'll start there. Doing this bottom hole. It's still higher, and we don't really want to clock the axle this way or this way right now. You can see the drive shaft. If you do this here, it'll clock that forward, and I don't think we really want that. We want it still level. And I think this is better for, like, if you're sitting a lot lower maybe, or you already have your links up higher on a custom chassis, say you manage your links up higher somehow, then that'll help. Or if you have custom length links, right? Like if we were to have custom links, you could use this further back position behind the center point of the axle. Part of it has to do with where you're aligning compared to your shaft, your axle shaft, right? If you're behind the axle shaft or in front of the axle shaft. But we'll go ahead and just do we want to do the top? I don't know if we want that much. Yeah, let's do the top. Let's just do it all the way at the top. YOLO. Remember, this guy's a 3D printed piece, so your first screws in are going to basically be threading that hole. You can see it threading it right now. See how it's threading? So just be aware, as you thread this, you are threading it. And don't over tighten. Again, just till it's snug. You don't need it to be super tight. You're basically going into plastic. If you go into any plastic super tight, you're going to strip. Right. And even in that topmost hole, we're barely hitting on our battery tray. You can see at full compression, we just push on it a little bit. And I'm not having to push very hard. The battery tray is kind of loose, so it's not a big deal. So I'm okay with that. You know, at flex, you're not hitting the battery tray at all. It's only when you are, both are going to compress fully. And again, we're compressing more than normal because we took our perches off. So, all right. I dig it. All right, it's all installed, and we just couldn't leave well enough alone. That blue servo was driving me nuts, so we put a new servo in here, and should be pretty peppy. And I think we're good to go now. We can go run it. Let's go run this guy. Actually, you know what? I want to weigh it. So the stock Bronco with no battery is 468 grams. The Defender's 483, so it's quite a bit heavier than the Defender. But let's go by the Bronco, saying the lightest one. 468. And now this guy, 304. Look at that, 304, 305, 304. Bam. Do it this way. There you go. 304. That is a huge difference. You're 164 grams lighter. I mean, this is a all metal servo. We've got the upgraded electronics, you know, the flow skid on the front, the riser on the back. We have more stuff, performance stuff, and we're still 164 grams lighter. That's awesome, guys. That's super. That's going to make such a performance difference. We'll just need to upgrade our wheels and tires, and yeah, there's a lot of other stuff we can tinker with too, and we'll do that over time. But man, we're going to run it with the stock tires though. We'll see how that does.
Shit. Tracks to drive shaft suck.
Well, I guess we're cutting that one short. Yup, that's the stock drive shaft. So we'll get some new metal drive shafts, but hopefully there's enough footage to kind of show you what it's about. All right, guys, I hope you could tell just how awesome this little beast is. It's super fun on the rocks, and you know, even a completely stock TRX4M, just it's transformed by the chassis. So that's pretty sweet. Obviously, we did have a couple upgrades here with the 3Flow9 stuff, and huge shout out to 3Flow9 for the anodizing here. We like the more solid look, so that's pretty sweet. The link risers in the rear, the skid in the front, and then we got our new servo, and then of course our Furitek brushless setup. But even in completely stock form, like I said, just the weight reduction and the geometry that you can change on your shocks, it's huge. It makes such a big difference, and it'll definitely transform your stock rig. Anyway, we're loving this thing, and if you made it this far in the video, why don't you put down in the comments below Super Bettle. Super Bettle. That'll tell us you've watched the whole video. And yeah, if you've got any questions, put them down in the comments as well. We'll answer them. And until then, make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit that notification bell, do all those things you do at the end of videos you like, and get out there and build something awesome. You know, this was a super easy conversion, and well worth the time and the money that goes into swapping it over. Plus, it just looks cool. Like that just looks neat. I love it. All right, guys, get out there, crash them, smash them, and bash them, but don't break the expensive parts.